Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I just finished work at around 9 p.m. today and I just got home. So instead of watching a Netflix, I decided to commentate on this game because I absolutely love it. Alright, so today's game is the semi-final in the Yangming Cup. The reason I didn't talk about some of the other games is because I look at the Kifu and I wasn't too excited about them. But this game is very high quality, so I'm going to talk about it. So in the semi-final, Wang Xinghao is playing against Ding Hao, both 9-dan professional, both world champions. So let's see what happens. Wang Xinghao is playing as black, and Ding Hao is playing as white. The game starts like this. Black approaches, white plays very calm Kosumi. Approaches, another very calm Kosumi. We can see that Ding Hao is very calm in this game. Black encloses the corner, absolutely giant move, and white plays a very tight one-space low pincer. Wang Xinghao decides to fight this, attaches out, white harness, black extends, and white now kicks to protect the corner. Black harness, white has to block that, and now black plays the keima to push white down. We can see when you pincer your opponent with a one space low pincer, at the beginning it looks really good because you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponent. But once your opponent made a few exchanges over here, the counter attack is also very fierce. Imagine your stone was on the 2-space low pincer or 2-space high pincer, then it will be a lot more difficult for black to deal with. But now black has a perfect counter attack point. So that's the pros and cons of the 1-space low pincer. Now against this move, if black just tried to crawl out, which is some of my viewers might do this, but it's actually not very good. It means that black is very comfortable in a sente, right? So black's group is fine and our stones are very low. Of course, it's still playable for us, but it's just very heavy. The top move is what white played. That is to play this kind of pincer move. If black blocks, then white can just jump up. And I really like this idea for white, right? Playing light, you don't have to save every single stone you have, especially in the early game. And there's nothing that you cannot sacrifice, right? As long as it makes sense. We can see here, it makes a lot of sense for white to do this, because later on, white can still play the Atari and capture in a sente, and black is very over-concentrated. So that is the brilliant idea behind this move. That is to sacrifice our stone over here, and things will become very clear. Of course, Wang Xinghao understands that, and therefore he didn't just capture the stone. He plays the keima and run towards the outside. White now plays the extension to protect his side, and black plays another keima enclosing another corner. White jumps up, and here black plays the extension. We can see black's idea is to kind of give up on this group. As long as this group doesn't die, then black is happy, just taking a bunch of territory on the outside. White now also takes a very big move on the outside. Not only encloses his side over here, but also later on there's attach, there's also the peep into black's corner. Of course, black doesn't want to answer in the corner right now, and therefore he plays the very big move over here, connecting the two moyo. And here white plays the shoulder hit to reduce black's moyo. Black pushes up, white jumps towards the center. And here black jumps again. This is a very big move. It builds the moyo on the left and also protect the corner and the moyo on the right side. A very nice move by black. And here white decides to play this approach. Obviously, that's a very intuitive move, right? Not only give white some sort of breathing room, but also pressuring black's two stones. And here Wang Xinghao decides to play a move. This is a sente move because looking at coming down. Therefore, white plays the Kosumi to protect the formation. And at this point, black slides into the corner, right? Trying to make a base. Maybe a better move here is for black to counterattack white first, right? White is going for an attack. We should pressure white first and then go back into the corner later on. In the actual game, black played the keima. That's a slight inaccuracy by black, but it's not the end of the world. The game is still fairly equal. But here, Ding Hao plays a very fierce attack over here. This is a very nice move by white, right? This is the kind of the weakness for black's big keima formation. Now, black cannot just deal with this move without thinking, right? And this is what happens a lot in our games when we don't spend the time to read out what's going to happen. Right? Sometimes we just block here because we thought this is a must-play move, but actually this is not the best move because white can just hane. Black turns on top, then white will just connect. We can see that there's a very serious weakness here. White's going to hane. If black fixes, then we can see black is quite slow. Black is not completely alive in the corner, and white already gained a little bit of territory in cente. Now white can simply block over here, and this is going to be a leading game for white because white has a base and black needs to spend an extra move to make a base. Not to say that there's later on an attach over here, which is quite annoying for black as well. When white plays the hane, what about black blocks the connection? Well, that's even worse because white can just connect. Black connects, white pushes out, and here we don't need to play any moves anymore. We can just see that black is broken into pieces. First of all, these two guys desperately need to live, right? You probably need to spend a move in the corner or attach out, but I mean, it's very difficult, right? Because your group on top is also in a lot of trouble. So you're just getting split into halves. White can lose the stone over here, but can you afford losing the stones in the corner? Not really. Therefore, this is a worse position for black. So blocking on the third line is a very intuitive, but a very obvious mistake if you spend about 1 minute thinking about it. What about black pushing on the fourth line? That's also a similar mistake because white can bump into black, and there's not much black can do. If black blocks, white hanes, black squeezes, then white will simply connect. Black plays out the tiger's mouth, white can simply extend out, and black connects. We can see that the result of this is that black is still not alive locally. White not only secures a lot of territory over here, white also secured a little base over here. So it's only black under fierce attack. Obviously, that's not acceptable for black either. In the actual game, Wang Xinghao thought about this whole thing, and he decided to attach out, which is the correct move. It's a very flexible way to deal with white's attack. White pushes on top, and black extends out. That's the shape move. White has to connect home, or otherwise black will play exactly where white is playing right now, and white's two stones will be in trouble. Here, Wang Xinghao played the hane, and this would be the first mistake by black. A better move here is for black to simply exchange a few moves over here, strengthening this connection. If white blocks, then black Atari. If black decides to bump into black to destroy shape, black can take, white has to block, and here black can hane. Now because black's shape is a lot thicker over here, makes this hane a lot stronger. When white cuts, black can extend and fight this out, and there's no problem. Black can actually fight this out, and it will be a fairly equal fight. Now at this point, obviously, if white just connects, that would not be a great idea because black can simply bump into white. And you can kind of remember that this shape is a very nice shape because black has ice space over here and ice space in the corner. It's almost alive already, which means that black is a very secure group. That means that black can just fight very freely on the outside. This is not something that white wants to see. White really wants to keep black's group very insecure to extract value. In the actual game, what is the problem with black hane here? It's because when white cuts over here, black can't extend anymore. Because white can Atari, and then there's a wedge forming double tiger's mouth. And now we can see that black is in trouble. First of all, you have to spend move over here to live the corner. The problem is after you live the corner, who's going to take care of the outside, right? Your outside is completely broken, and it's white controlling the outside. So that's not going to work for black. So when white cuts over here, black now realizes the problem, and he decides to try to exchange moves now. The problem is white won't let that happen. White Atari on top, forcing black to connect, and now white extends out. And now we can see that white's shape over here is absolutely beautiful. It used to be just a shoulder hit. Now white has formed a giant group, right? It's going to have points. Now, what can black get here in compensation? Not much. While Wang Xinghao is trying his best to gain some compensation back by Ataring, white extends, black blocks. Before white turns, white decides to Atari. That's a very nice order. Black connects, white turns, and here black Atari. White has to run, black Atari, white extends, black keeps pushing. There's a ladder over here, so white cannot cut right now. White has to extend. And at this point, black connects on the third line. So black did gain some compensation by piercing through here and threatening the 3 stones over here. But we can see that the 3 stones are not that worried because there's always this Atari and the wedge on top, so white is actually okay here. But before white deals with these 3 stones, white can now pressure black's group over here, and Ding Hao plays the correct Tsuji over here, which is the bump into black. Now, this move is a very nice shape move, right? It shows that Ding Hao has a very great understanding of shape. But if you think about the shape here, right? If you exchange these 2 moves, then you can see the shape move is here, right? White needs to destroy the shape by bumping into black and breaking everything. So yeah, sometimes when we're trying to think about shape, we can just play an exchange and then we can see things better. That's probably a good method for you to find the right shape to play. White now bumps into black, and black extends into 2-2. This looks a little difficult for black, and it actually is difficult. The next move, white plays the Kosumi on the second line, and this lets Wang Xinghao off the hook, because here a more fierce variation that can punish black is to actually bump into black like this. This looks like a vulgar move, and it's probably why Ding Hao didn't play it in the actual game, but this is a very effective move. If black blocks, which he kind of has to, then white can play the Kosumi. And here we can see that black cannot even connect anymore, because then white can just block here, and this is white kills black. Black has no way out, and this is just game over. If black extends on the first line, then white hane. We all know in the corner there's not enough eye space to make 2 eyes. What about the life and death over here? If black plays the peep, then white can simply Kosumi. Black pushes, white captures, and we can see that this is going to be white is clean alive, right? If you hane here, I can Atari. You can't get home. If black jumps into the first line like this, white can block from behind. Black plays the Kosumi. Looks like there's something going on here, right? Obviously, if white just block here, then black can Atari, forming a ko. But life and death is very important here, because white can Atari from behind, and there's nothing for black. And if black just plays the hane like this, then white can just take, right? There's really nothing, right? If you extend, then I can block. You turn here, I can throw in, and white has 2 clear eyes. So basically, this move is not going to affect life and death. Therefore, white can just clean kill black here. So at this point, the best move for black is probably just turn here. White cuts, and black hanes. Black plays the shape move, and black connects in the center. White now squeeze black's liberty, black squeezes, and white extends, black blocks. Here, white has to answer. Otherwise, black Atari and connect on the first line. White only has 2 liberties. So white adds another move, and black adds another move to live in Gote. And black only has a 5-point corner, and white captured a giant, a big chunk over here. Not only it's big in terms of territory, but also it's really good for the thickness on the outside. And white gets to act in the corner here first, and obviously this is a winning game for white. If you want to dive deeper and support what I'm doing, check out my Patreon. I regularly post exclusive high-quality content on Joseki's pro game breakdowns and even full courses, stuff you won't find anywhere else. The link is in the description. Thanks so much. Let's continue. So it was a very big chance for Ding Hao to convert this into victory right now. But in the actual game, Ding Hao decided to not play a vulgar move, therefore he played the Kosumi here. Black hanes, white plays the shape move, and black blocks. Here white blocks to live, and black also blocks on top to form a shape that's alive. Now here, because black has an Atari, right, if you go for this, then because black has this possibility of forming an eye over here, therefore white decides to get rid of that first. Black cannot answer. If black answers, white hanes, black is dead. Therefore, in the actual game, Wang Xinghao plays the extension at the 1-2. This also happens to be a mistake, and this makes this game really difficult for black at this point. Now, the reason this is a mistake is because it doesn't follow the principle of trying to cause maximum trouble before you go back to make yourself alive, right? A lot of times you have a group, you need to live, you see how you can live, but before you live, you should exchange some sente to gain some favorable exchanges before you live. And this is a perfect example of that. Black should have played a counterattack over here first. White's correct move is just block. Black squeezes, white connects, and black honeys on the first line. If white goes for the kill, that doesn't work because black can attach. You play the wedge, then I can extend out. Now we can see black live in a more efficient way by connecting back home. This is definitely more points because all these are going to become points, right? Because you have eyes on both sides. So of course at this point, correct move for white is just to simply connect, and then black can extend into the corner. We can see these exchanges are really good for black in terms of endgame. So why not live with some endgame profits? In the actual game, black extends at 1-2, which is a very tiny mistake for us, but for professionals like them, it definitely mattered a lot. All right, so at this point, white finally gets the sente. Instead of capturing this right away, because if you just rush to capture, then black plays a tiger's mouth, maybe the whole thing's going to die here. So white doesn't have time to capture. White has to fight here first. Black plays the tiger's mouth. It looks like black has to block here, but then white can Atari, and then Atari on top. Because white has an extra stone, this makes the connection very smooth. So in the actual game, black plays the tiger's mouth to prevent the connection on the left side. And white plays the shape move. This Hane is very nice because it controls black stone over here, forming a nice ice space in the center. Black now cuts. This is trying to cause some problems on the left side before attacking the left side, the right side. White extends out. The reason white cannot just play like these kind of moves is because when black extends, this causes a lot of problems for white stone over here and for the corner, right? So white playing extension is very good because it basically gives maximum help towards the right side, because the right side is really what both players care about at this point. Black now connects. That's a sente. That's also asking how white wants to respond locally. White plays the Atari. Now it looks like just like a casual Atari, but actually comes with a lot of calculations. And actually, it definitely took a lot of time from Ding Hao to decide that that he can play this Atari, because we obviously have a very dangerous looking double Atari over here, right? But if black plays the double Atari, white takes, black takes, white simply extend down. We can see that capturing the stone didn't really give black an extra eye space. Now the fact that white was able to capture and form a Panuki here is that later on white can either cut or clamp to get his group back. So Ding Hao thought that the security of the group over here is worth more than the loss that white suffered over here. Now this is not easy. It's not easy to come to this conclusion, and it shows that Ding Hao is an extraordinary player when it comes to the judgment, like to judge the value of this trade, and he has correctly assessed that. So I find it to be very impressive, because losing this much territory just to gain the security is worth it. I mean, that's not easy to realize. In the actual game, Wang Xinghao kind of agreed with him, and then he connects over here. White now comes back and play the shape move to fix the double Atari, and this is the best shape to control the stone over here. Black now plays detach, and white turns. Here always the move is to turn here, do not block here, because when you block here, this becomes a sente. Now the fact this is a sente makes this group so much more risk. So correct move is always for you to turn. And now black plays the Hane on the second line, or the tiger's mouth on the second line. A very good move, giving black an extra eye. Also, there's a monkey jump to connect back home, and also it breaks white's eye space over here. A very well played move by black. White now, obviously, because he just lost eye space, therefore he has to get out. Black pushes out, and white now extends back. This is gaining the eye space back. For white, at least white has an eye over here. And at this point, black turns, preventing the cutting point. White now plays the squeeze, and black attaches into white. And at this point, this is where the reading is so important. White cannot really make a mistake here, right? If white just, without thinking, just block over here, then black cuts. White Atari, and black can now push over here. If white takes, then black connects over here. We can see that white's shape is very bad. There's a Hane over here. There's a cutting point over here. white is collapsing. But if white just block over here, then black can squeeze Atari and then Atari on top. And we can see that white is also very much in trouble, right? If white cuts over here, then black can first use the monkey jump to get home. White is dead locally, and how does white fight this, right? You have the cut here, but there's already a ko. It's very difficult for white. So every move here comes with a lot of reading, right? It looks like a tiny space, but actually it's very confusing here. Because let's look at what happened in the game. It's it's almost like funny to watch this. White pushes over here. Black now push from here. All right, looks very chaotic. Now white all of a sudden decides to connect. The reason white does not want to play like this is because black can simply pull the stone out. We can see a miai of cutting, and then white is just lost. Right, so you cannot play whatever you want. White connects in the center, and black connects over here. And at this point, instead of connecting anything, white decides to hane on the outside. Black bumps into white, and white all of a sudden comes back to connect the stone over here. Looking very weird, but it's all very mandatory, because if you block here, then black connects here. We can see that black claims so much territory, right? And white still has so many cutting points. So that's not acceptable. White had to connect over here, and Wang Xinghao decided to counterattack by turning over here, threatening white's outside. But actually this turns out to be a fairly big mistake by black. What black should have played is to simply cut over here. It looks really strange, because how can that be good for black when white was able to cap black inside and there's a snapback, right? You probably have to spend a move at some point, but the reason this is good for black is because black was able to capture a lot of territory. Now, it's not just territory, but also the fact that black's two groups are completely safe right now. That also has a lot of value. So getting in close like this is not a big deal. Black can now play the hane, and white hanes, and here black can be very practical and just connect more points back. And we can see the result of this is that white didn't really seal the entire outside. There's still a leaking point here, right? And for white to build like a center, that's not easy, because black already has a stone. There's a leaking point. So yeah, it's not that easy. And white didn't really capture these three stones, right? So it's half white, half black over here. So this would be an equal game actually for Wang Xinghao. But in the actual game, when white connects, Wang Xinghao plays out the counterattack, which is the professional's intuition. But this intuition turns out to be wrong, because when white connects, it causes insecurities for both black groups, and that's the problem. Now black plays the turn over here, and white decides to just cap black inside, and black spends another move to connect the group, right? So in the process, black lost so many points, but also you spend two moves, right? You could have cut here. It was one move, you could have fixed everything with more points, but now you're spending two moves just to make sure your groups are fine. So we can see obviously this is a loss for black at this point. And at this point, white comes back and plays out the tiger's mouth. And we can see that it strengthens the center. It fixed the problem over here almost. And white has some potential in the center. And this is just a leading game for white at this point. So next move, black decides to come back and connect here. This is always a giant move. Not only it's about a bunch of points, but also it's about white's thickness on the outside, right? When white gets to cut here, this means that white is rock solid over here. So it's points plus thickness, and therefore it's the biggest move on the board right now. Of course, white will now come in and invade over here, right? You can't let all these become territory. Black plays the keima, white attaches, black hanes, white extends, and black presses white on top. Usually, a lot of my viewers might have problems dealing with this type of situation as white, because it feels hard to breathe as white. But for professionals, it's very easy. And let's learn from then how to deal with this, right? The first thing, follow our principle of attaching to our opponent, right? We follow counterattack, or we follow attach to our opponent. And the third principle is to play a move that gives us as many options as possible. Now, for example, this would be a good move as well, right? For not maybe for them, right? The top professionals, but for us, this makes sense. We're looking at tiger's mouth. We're looking at jumping down. So this wouldn't be a horrible move for my viewers. But of course, let's look at the most accurate way for dealing with your group over here. First, we attach our opponent. When we attach our opponent, it allows us to make shape and to create ice space very naturally. In the actual game, black decides to counterattack. If black honeys, then we pull the stone back. We can see that black has to worry about our counterattack over here. That's a cutting point. If black connects, then we play another move to give us as many options as possible. We're following our principles. We're looking at attach over here, a peep over here, a jump over here, and we already have a lot of ice space. So white has absolutely no problem living inside decently. What if our opponent counterattacks like what Wang Xinghao did? Well, then we can counterattack as well. That's our principle. We clamp over here, the correct move. Black has to extend. We pull the stone back. Guess what happens? All of a sudden, instead of trying to kill us, because black is so weak on the outside, black has to spend move dealing with his own weakness. And now white blocks, black connects, and here white plays out the honey. Just looking at the Atari over here, black connects, and then follow the principle of invasion. Attaching to our opponent, black honeys, we extend, and black has to respond to us. We got these two stones in sente, and then we attach your opponent, right? So after following a bunch of principles, all of a sudden, white is not in trouble anymore. White is not only out, but also has solid ice space. And that's what you should learn from these professional players. Black now extends, and at this point, Ding Hao decided to invade the corner. This is a very tough invasion because it looks very dangerous because black has a lot of stones. But actually for Ding Hao, this is all textbook stuff. Black tries to kill. This is the strongest move. And white kicks. Black squeezes, and white now plays the Kosumi. Here, black goes in for the kill, and white attaches into black. The idea is white cannot live locally. White has to use this attach, right? Making use of this stone over here to basically gain a sente. If black honeys, which is what happened in the game, white connects, and we can see an obvious miai. White is trying to connect this and live the corner, and white is trying to cut here. In the actual game, black squeeze over here, that's the correct move, and white now cuts at this point. And in the actual game, black decides to push through. Now, what I didn't understand in the game is I didn't understand why black didn't exchange this move to extend liberties. Even if black cannot win this liberty fight, that means that later on, black squeezing are going to be sente. So I didn't understand why black did not play this. I think if white connects, I can play the attach and extend my liberties, right? So I didn't check this part. I didn't have time today to really do a deep AI dive into the game. I just watched the commentary, but the commentator didn't say this, so I wonder why this didn't happen. But if you know, make sure you comment below in the video so you can teach all of us like why this didn't happen. Black decided to push over here in the actual game, and white comes back to capture the stone over here, right? See, now black doesn't have a chance to extend. And at this point, black plays the hane, trying to look for a sente to capture the stone in sente. And now white jumps towards the center, making sure he's okay over here. Black now placed the very big endgame move over here, right? This is always a big endgame. White turns, black squeezes, and now white pushes on top. This is also a very big endgame, right? Imagine if black gets to play like this, right? All of a sudden, it's massive expansion, for black. So when black plays the squeeze, white decides to push on top. Black honeys, white honeys, black extends, and white now honeys over here. This looks like a miscalculation by white, but actually everything is under control. Let's see what happens. Black cuts over here, white connects, and black double Ataris, right? It looks like a blunder by white, but actually this is all Ding Hao's plan. After black gets a very nice Panuki in the center, white now counter pushes. And then all of a sudden we realize that black cannot really block. If black blocks over here, then white will cut. This is looking at a double Atari, so black has to extend. But then white's connect is a sente. Black connects, then white connects over here. This is a disaster because black lost too many points in a corner. But if black captures, I'm not sure if this is less of a disaster because when white pushes through, black cannot cut anymore, which means the center is just dead. I think this is a bigger disaster actually than losing the corner. So we can tell that the blocking doesn't work. In the actual game, black jumps over here and white connects. Black cuts, and white attaches. For the same reason, black cannot wedge, therefore black extends down. And we can see that white managed to break into black's territory after the sacrifice over here. I think it's a very well played sequence by Ding Hao, all planned. Alright, at this point, finally, white comes back to play the Kosumi. It's a very big endgame, secures a lot of points here, and at this point, it's just a leading endgame for white. And it's quite difficult for Wang Xinghao to come back, especially against a very good opponent like Ding Hao. Alright, Wang Xinghao goes for a final struggle by cutting in the center, very aggressive. White Atari, black extends, white pushes, black keeps extending. Idea is trying to threaten the group over here, but of course that's very difficult because white now plays out the Kosumi. This move is a very strong move. It's looking at poking at the elephant eye, killing the 3 stones, and also cutting over here. Right? Thanks to this stone, when white cuts, it's very difficult for black to get out. So Wang Xiao plays very fierce as well, playing this move, not only trying to support the 3 stones, but also indirectly like supporting black stones from behind. Very crazy. White pushes, black extends. Now white doesn't have time to cut here because black also has a cut. So white has to fight in the center first. Black now throws in. White simply blocks on top. Now the reason white doesn't capture is because of some of the Aji that, white was worried about. Because black has a squeeze over here, right? It causes a lot of problems. If white takes, then black and Atari, right? And here white kind of has to play out to Tsuji like this. White would be fine. But if white just connects, then black and Atari here. We can see that this stone can't really, it can't really run out. Okay. So Ding Hao doesn't want to go to that complication. And therefore, in the actual game, Ding Hao blocks on top, goes for a trade. At this point, black Honey's trying to save the stones. White prevents that. Black Atari, white connects, and black now cuts in the center. Now, the reason, so first of all, the 2 stones are kind of dead in the center. And the reason, like, black is not rushing to capture the 4 stones here, which looks very urgent, is because cutting here is more urgent. It's bigger because black is trying to push through. So white has to connect, and this move kind of helps out the stones over here, making them a little bit more secure, right? They're not fine completely, but it's a little bit better with Atari. Finally, black comes back to take care of this. And white Hane's in the center and claiming the points in the center. This trade is fairly equal, and at this point, it's still kind of a losing game for Wang Xinghao. But Wang Xiao didn't give up. Wang Xiao goes for the squeeze Atari, absolutely huge, right? This is squeezing the eye away from white and also threatening life and death because when black extends down, white's whole thing only has 1 eye, right? If this is cut off. White plays the Atari, black squeezes, looking at the cutting point, white takes, and black now pushes through, completely cutting off the dragon from the center group. Now this is really threatening the life and death here. So white connects, black takes back, and now white connects in the center, trying to go for a wedge and a counterattack. Black now pushes, getting rid of the remaining eye that white has. Now white really has to be careful because the next move, black extends, is really a life and death problem. But before that, white decides to counterattack. Black connects, white takes, and black Atari. That's obviously a co-threat. White has to capture, black takes back, and white Atari. Black takes, and white takes back. And at this point, black turns, another co-threat takes back, and white now extends in the center. And at this point, black decides to not fight this kill anymore because at the end of the day, he doesn't want to lose the 4 stones here. Black connects over here, white Atari, black connects, and at this point, white cannot Tanuki, right? We said that extension is a Sente. So white captures, not a Sente, but a killing move, actually. So white has to capture here. Now the dragon is fine. And at this point, black Atari, white connects, and black plays out a Sente. At this point, black extends, another Sente, and black decided to play a Kosumi. I think this is the way for Wang Xinghao to resign, actually. Because here, the correct move is, or the safe move, obviously, is for black to just connect back, right? Which means that, these guys are safe now. And then we'll just go into an endgame. But Wang Xinghao knows that Ding Hao is so good at endgame, and he doesn't have a chance in this losing endgame. Therefore, he plays a more aggressive move to see if he can enclose a bit more points. And, this is just a more efficient move trying to save the 3 stones here. But this doesn't tactically work because here white pushes first and then pushes in the center. This is an absolute sente because there's a cutting point now. This cutting point is very fatal, so black has to connect. And at this point, when white plays the Kosumi, Wang Xinghao decided to resign. The reason Wang Xinghao resigned here is because Wang Xinghao is going to lose something big, right? For example, if black connects the group over here, right? This is fine now. But then we have a very famous Tsuji that is squeezed over here. And there's a miai of cutting points. And black cannot fix them both at the same time. Therefore, the whole group is going to die. Now, if black plays the bamboo, this would save the group over here. But what about this Keima, right? This would make sure that black's group over here is captured. And that also is a losing game. Because if black tries to struggle like this, even so white cannot cut here, but white just needs to connect. And there's a miai. White is trying to cut here, and white is trying to cut here. And that is also game over for black. So at this point, it makes a lot of sense for black to just resign, right? There's no point in playing, for players of their level. Overall, I think it's a very high quality game, especially by Ding Hao. His ability to control the middle to end game is absolutely insane, right? It shows you why he's a very strong world champion. Of course, Wang Xinghao has played extremely well in this game as well, but his losing move was actually very early on when he turned over here instead of cutting on the fifth line, securing the connection and securing the territory. That would have been an equal game, but because of him counterattacking over here, Ding Hao managed to gain a lead. And what's really impressive is Ding Hao never let that lead slip. Right? It was very difficult for Wang Xinghao from that point all the way to the end, which is kind of crazy. So anyway, this game doesn't have like fierce fight, but I think a lot of the little tricks that both players are playing, especially a lot of the very slippery variations, right? A lot of calculations behind those, and also some very brilliant endgame ideas are very interesting to watch in this game. So Ding Hao won this semifinal. He's going towards the final against Tu Xiaoyu, 9P in the final. So we'll cover that game in the next day or two. So stay tuned. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I regularly post professional game commentary, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.